Essentially what happened is you had an Algerian immigrant. It's unknown if that individual was a legal or illegal migrant. I'm assuming legal. But said immigrant committed one of the most heinous attacks, arguably in Irish history. And I'd say that's probably a lot considering, well, Ireland's been through some stuff, even in recent history. And what happened was 5 kids were victimized, let's just say. There was a brutal attack by an Algerian immigrant on 5 school children of extremely young age. And this follows a sharp increase in crime as the woke Irish government continues with their open border policies. Then we have the typical leftist media in the area reporting on the event as an unknown male or unidentified male. They did their typical let's protect the man's identity, so we hide the fact that all of the crime and heinous acts being committed in Europe are being committed by people that we're allowing into the country from other developing and third world nations. And it seemed as though this time it was the straw that broke the camel's back. From grooming gangs in London, terror cells and terrorist attacks, the migrant criminal underworld. I mean, you guys get it. It was one story too many, and well, things erupted. People started protesting, people took to the streets, and now all of a sudden people are talking about immigration practices and policies, and especially police policies, who continue to enable and protect all of this nonsense. People are dying, people are being victimized, young people are being victimized, and the journalists can't even lay out the basic facts as to who is committing these acts of violence. Police departments don't target these communities, don't target any of these gangs out of fear of being labeled racist or applying a heavy hand of policing on migrant neighborhoods. The same kind of, quote, over-policing that is claimed to be happening in inner city communities in the United States is the same sort of logic, and people are just getting fed up. Enough is enough. Look at the crime statistics in the UK, Canada, the United States. It's the same everywhere you go, even in the Netherlands, as the clip we played yesterday. And so it all comes back to that initial question and kind of what I was alluding to in the intro. Are we doing the right thing here? Or should we be having an honest conversation about facts without the fear of being labeled a far-right bigot or racist? We have to have a conversation about values, about traditions, about assimilation, because obviously what we're doing right now is an unsustainable practice. And I'd argue, to a certain extent, it's becoming a deadly practice. We're told by the globalist puppet masters that we have to open our borders, that actually we have sins to atone for, and therefore we must open our borders. We are told that we should witness the destruction of our culture, our traditions, our country, and that it's all justified. Nobody would ever argue that Japan, which I would say has a much darker history than the United States, nobody would ever argue that Japan ought to give up their national identity, ought to give up their traditions, give up their culture, and open their borders to the world's masses, or open their borders to the religious extreme and to groups of people who are going to come into their country disrespecting their values, disrespecting their people, disrespecting their laws, committing heinous acts or just general criminal acts. Nobody is asking the Japanese to do that. Nobody's telling the Japanese that they have to do that, and if they don't, well, it's because they're horrible, racist, and they should be condemned. If nobody's telling Japan that they need uncontrolled, unfettered, and open border immigration, then why is it that we have to accept it? Why is it that we have to accept people into our countries that have no intention of becoming one of us? I don't have an issue with immigrants. I don't have an issue with people who are seeking a different life, for people who worked hard and achieved an opportunity, and so we're going to let them come here, create jobs, or maybe work here, pay taxes. I have no issue with that. But I have an issue when we simply open the floodgates, allowing individuals from South America to come in, establishing gangs and criminal enterprises, human smuggling. I have an issue with that. I have an issue with our refugee practices when it comes to certain countries in Africa and the Middle East. There's obviously a problem when it comes to extremism, radical religious extremism. Anybody who denies that is a liar, or has their head so far up their own you-know-what, it's not even funny. But if you even mention it, well, you're being discriminatory, or you're labeling all Muslims as that. No one is saying that. What we're saying is maybe we shouldn't just be accepting like hundreds of thousands of, quote, refugees every single year from countries with serious radicalization issues. When we see people on the streets being being interviewed saying, you know, there's going to be a day of jihad and Sharia law is going to take over, and our people, our religion, we're going to take over this country. We're going to take over your country. Yeah, maybe that's not an okay thing. That seems like the opposite of assimilation. That seems like the will to conquer, not the will to assimilate. You know, we're insane. We're freaking stupid. We're being gaslit into accepting something that would never be accepted abroad. For Pete's sakes. We see all hell break loose in the Middle East. Hundreds of thousands, if not millions of refugees created in a matter of months, depending on the conflict. I mean, Syria, Israel, blah, 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 the list goes on. Yemen, anyways, I'm not just going to keep naming countries, you get the point. All of a sudden, overnight, hundreds of thousands of people are on the move, being displaced from their homes due to conflict in the Middle East. We have to take them in. Europe has to take them in. But all neighboring Muslim countries, Jordan, Egypt, the UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, the list goes on, don't take a freaking person. Are we the suckers? Are we the stupid people? That's certainly what it feels like, right? Maybe it has something to do with Jordan, Egypt, the UAE, and the rest of these neighboring nations knowing a little something. Knowing that if they open the borders to ostensibly their own people, I mean, the whole region is Islamic, maybe they understand that there's a radical element that would destroy the peace and serenity that they have in their nation. And so they don't do it. Instead, what they do is they enable the globalist scam that the world's refugees must go to 5 different nations, all Western nations, in decline. Come on, make it make sense. You can't, because it doesn't. It doesn't make any sense, and we're reaching the boiling point. Ireland is one of the wokest of woke places. It's a place where people say stuff like this in their parliament.
One thing I strongly agree with the Deputy on is the need to set a target to have a number of people from ethnic minorities in areas of the public service. We have a health service that's very diverse, although less so as you go up towards the senior positions, not so much in the Gardaí, not so much in the Defence Forces, not so much in the education sector, as the Deputy mentioned, not at all in the civil service, which is very white, including the Department of Equality, for example, and that actually needs to change. So we need to have, I think, a target for people who come from ethnic minority backgrounds, but also dedicated recruitment campaigns to encourage people, because we do need a generation of young people growing up in Ireland who are people of colour to see black and brown school principals, judges, Cian Corla perhaps in the future. Who knows? Visibility and opportunity is really important.
It's a place that is anti-white. It's a place that is bought into the globalist scam, this utopic view of the world where people without a national identity, without assimilation, can all come under one banner and live in peace. But it's a pipe dream. We need a unified culture. We need assimilation, because without it, you get absolute chaos, destruction, and death. That's true in the UK. That's true in the United States. That's true across the board, and those questioning it, those pointing out that obvious fact, aren't racist. We're just able to see that something isn't being done right. The argument isn't that multiculturalism is a bad thing. I don't care what your nationality is, what your gene pool is, I don't care what your skin color is, but we all have to live together as Americans, or Canadians, or Brits, as French, or as Italians. A country's national identity must be respected, and what's currently going on is an attack on Western civilization. It is an attempted rebranding, restructuring, and I'd argue complete overhaul and possible conquering of Western civilization, and it's wrong. If it was happening anywhere else, it would be condemned. But because it's happening to us, it's somehow justified, and we're supposed to shut up and take it. I can't accept that, and I never will. Controversial topic, sure, but I think it's an important topic. It's something we should be discussing, and I really don't think I said anything that was out of line or bigoted or wrong. I'm just calling it as I see it. Anyways, that's what I got for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and if